Historic parks in downtown Boston define the city in many ways. They're magnets for visitors, shoppers, and neighborhood residents, but they also embody a sense of belonging to the city. All of those functions are being re-examined in the current planning process for Boston Common and in restoration of its most famous monument, the memorial to the 54th Regiment. One of the organizations involved is the Friends of the Public Garden. We'd like to welcome its president, Liz Vizza. Thank you very much for being with us, Liz.
Great to be with you, Chris. Thanks for inviting me.
Liz, I want to start with the state of things right now in the Common, in the neighboring parks, the Public Garden, even the Mall and Commonwealth Avenue that you're all working with. In the previous time, there would have been lots of visitors coming in and using these places. Are they more desolate now, or do you think that they may be engaging people in a different way?
I would say that at this time, it has shown us more clearly than ever before how critically important our public spaces are. As every other bit of civic infrastructure has closed down, the parks have been open, available, free to all. Many people have come to seek solace and refuge in a time of stress, so it's really been heartening to see that. At the same time, there are less commuters and there are less visitors, and so those populations have been reduced, but people with families, kids that are out of school and working and doing school virtually, those people have been enjoying it, and it means so much to them. We heard a lot from people. Whenever something is wrong, they see it maybe in a more urgent way than they would normally. So it's been really heartening.
I want to ask you about the memorial to the 54th Regiment because just a couple of years ago, I think when you get started on the restoration, this was not just about maintenance of a three-dimensional object. This was about stewardship of history. Where is that going next?
It's very exciting, actually. This last Monday was a very dramatic moment in the Common. The 10,500-pound bronze was lifted from its foundation. There were many of us there and many media there watching this very dramatic moment. All the stone around it had been removed over the last couple of weeks, and the last piece of bronze was removed on Monday, put in a flatbed truck, and taken to a conservation studio, where it will be restored and the foundation under it will be rebuilt. But what's exciting about what we've been doing is using this as a foundation, as a platform for dialogue, working with the city, the National Park Service, and the Museum of African American History to talk about race and social justice. And we're very excited about our next community conversation, which of course, like all conversations, will be virtual this Monday, called The Power of Public Monuments in a Time of Racial Reckoning. So I encourage everybody to come and join us on Monday at 6 o'clock. You can go to the website, Shaw 54th Memorial Restoration.org, and sign up, register for it. We'll have several people talking about what does this monument, how does it speak to us today? What does it say in terms of power and public and monuments? And clearly monuments are a really timely, important, and urgent question we're talking about right now.
And it's interesting because at the same time, there are other monuments in Boston that were in place for a long time. Few people seem to complain about them publicly, and all of a sudden, a lot of us look at them and say, "Wait a minute, I'm not sure that's right." What's happening?
Yeah, there have been. And our three parks hold the largest collection of public art in the city. We take care of 42 pieces of public art. And we are committed to digging beneath them and understanding what's behind the bronze and the stone. I actually wrote an op-ed about this last month to talk about the importance of understanding who is represented, who had the power to put the monuments up, and what they say to us today. In fact, for instance, the Shaw 54th was the first time Black people, men, were shown as real human beings and not caricatures. We have a monument to Crispus Attucks on the Common, and very little people know about that. We have a monument to William Lord Garrison, who was the most radical abolitionist, but even Garrison expressed racist beliefs. Common in his time and common in our time. So we are going to be looking beneath those apparent monuments to see what is really in there.
Well, turning to the rest of the Boston Common, before we go to the Common, we should mention you have a conversation that's coming up very soon about these monuments, including a scholar taking part who is very critical of one of the monuments in Boston.
So this is the Monday conversation I mentioned, which is the Power of Public Monuments. Renee Ader, who was at our last forum a year and a half ago at the Tremont Temple. She's an art historian, a public art historian. She was also our members reception speaker last year. Her focus has been monuments to slaves, to African Americans. She's a deep and wonderful thinker about expression. What does it mean to have a three-dimensional object in the public, and what does it say to us? And then David Blight, who is a historian at Yale, he is on our committee to renew the Shaw. He is Frederick Douglass's biographer and won a Pulitzer Prize for it. So he will be in conversation with Renee, and it will be moderated by Channel 5's Karen Holmes Ward. And it's not just a conversation with the two of them. We really want to encourage the public to speak about it. We want to say, what does this monument say to you? What does it feel like to have the monuments that we have in our public spaces? So we're really going to be organizing it to be as much of a dialogue with the public as a dialogue between these two scholars.
Well, plans are in the works for a monument to Martin Luther King and Coretta Scott King on the Boston Common, but you also have a whole master plan for the Common. You've done some conversations in the neighborhoods to find out what people want there. What have you learned from those?
Well, that's been so wonderful because it is the people's park. You know, it has neighbors, but almost 60,000 people consider the Common their neighborhood park, but it is the park for all of Boston. So as you said, last year we took the show on the road and we sent park lists out to all the many of the neighborhoods in the city to ask people, what do you want? What is your vision of the future? How can we reimagine this park for you? You know, a large percentage of people love the green space. You know, we are in a dense and growing city, and particularly in the center of the city. This is not a big park, 50 acres. So people love to come and just have a green place where they can get that respite from the, you know, harried and busy urban environment that they live in. They want improvements. There's a frog pond that can be improved. We have some interesting ideas about how that can be a more wonderful node of activity. They love those nodes of activity in the Brewer Plaza area. There's just some basic infrastructure needs that need to be done. So, you know, fixing all the broken things that have been broken by the love of too many people over too many years and not enough capital investment to take care of it, the drainage and the paths. But there is a huge amount of love and connection that people have to this park, which is really wonderful to hear.
The Common has never been what you would think of as a hotbed of tranquility. It's a place to go to be around people. And I'm thinking of things that can change the character of at least sections of the Common, like you did a few years earlier with the Brewer Fountain. Talk about the potential of even a small change to make a very noticeable difference.
Yeah, so also we're having our third public meeting, which like every other public meeting will be virtual on September 16th. And instead of having one meeting, we're going to be having 6 meetings. So in that meeting, we'll be talking about the whole plan, looking at how to make entrances more inviting, what can we do around the Parkman Bandstand to make that a stronger node of activity and making it handicap accessible, because it has a non-functioning handicap accessible system in there that just hasn't worked for years. Adding bathrooms. I mean, I know that's not sexy stuff, but it's really important. When we had our pilot bathrooms out, 800 people a day use those restroom facilities. So we're proposing a couple more places for bathrooms. Again, as I said, the frog pond, it can be even a more exciting 4-season node of activity. So we're proposing ways of enhancing the building, enhancing areas that you can come and enjoy after hours. And after the season is over, the summer and the winter season, we have shoulder seasons that can be much more creatively engaging in that space. So we'll be having that public meeting on the 16th, and then stay tuned for 4 meetings that will be looking at each of these nodes and park-wide issues. And you can come and talk to one of us and provide your comments through those 4 meetings. And then we'll have another meeting early October where we bring everybody back.
By the way, did you ever have to worry about any excessive crowding in recent months? I mean, apart from some of the events that drew crowds, was that an issue for you?
You know, it wasn't. I think people have been playing by the rules. We put up signs, you know, like everyone has seen signs in their public spaces to honor the rules. You know, if we all play by the rules, we'll get through this. So I would say during the protests, the reality was, you know, the first one on the last day of May, 20,000 people were right in front of the Shaw and across the street from the State House. So there was no social distancing during those protests. And there were so many protests, which was very heartening. This park was used again and again over weeks. And many people wore masks and some people didn't. And some people tried to stay apart and many people didn't, because when you have a big crowd, it just doesn't happen. So I hope that that was a safe time to be together and an important time for people. But yeah, that would be probably the most glaring time that people were not socially distancing.
I'd ask about one other recent development affected by the pandemic, as it turns out. Because I know these parks, they are the intersection of the natural and the artificial. And at the public garden, you've got to drain the lagoons now because you don't have the swan boats running this year, and you've got ducks that are suffering.
Yeah, I know. It was very sad on Monday or Tuesday. The park department drained it. They're on the case, dealing with digging out the muck on the bottom, doing testing. They were doing testing and treating, but it wasn't enough. A combination of a drought, really hot weather, the lack of aeration that's created by those swan boats moving every day, and it was toxic to the ducks. So yeah, it was really a sad moment. We are hoping that they will be able to fundamentally solve that problem and put the water back once they've done that.
We should mention, I know you, as you mentioned, there are a lot of meetings coming up virtually or otherwise. And if people want to find out more details, you've got a website where they can get that.
Yeah, absolutely. There is a website for the Boston Common Master Plan. Just Google Boston Common Master Plan. You will go to that website. In our website, Friends of the Public Garden, you will learn about all the things we're doing. In fact, because it is a pandemic and we're not having our tour, normal tour program, which brings up to 500 people through the garden in the summer, we have a virtual tour that I videoed a couple weeks ago. So go on the website for that, a tour of the public garden. And certainly, as I said, the Shaw 54th memorialrestoration.org is a place to learn about all things Shaw 54.
Thank you very much for taking the time to join us.
Thank you for inviting me. Glad to be here.
Liz Vizza from the Friends of the Public Garden. We'll have more news in just a moment.